We got a bit of an error, but hey, I'm writing backwards. I if it ain't my brand, I'm not advertising it, and I only advertise the love of Yeshua. You know what I'm saying? Jesus Christ, as we know him. But good morning, good morning, good morning, beautiful people. Good afternoon, good evening. Doesn't matter what time it is, just know today is the day that the Lord has made, and I will rejoice and be glad in it. Why? Because God is good, he's good all the time. Duh. All right, y'all. We got to get into this, right? So I'm going to show y'all a video that I actually screen recorded of myself, but I initially went live on Facebook just as briefly as possible without going into any intricate details about basically the purview of immigration, you know, who's supposed to enforce it, what is it really? Because a lot of the times that there's these fallacies circulating out of ignorance. People don't know any better. They're uninformed, right? They lack of some knowledge, and they assume, they assume that because someone is residing in a location undocumented, that they're illegal. And or they call these people motherfucking criminals, right? And so criminals and immigrants and migrants are utilized interchangeably. And the truth of the matter is that they all have their distinct definitions. They're all different. They're not the same. So to ignorantly use them interchangeably as if they describe the same entity is, it's pretty, dumb. Ill-informed, like I said. Maybe it's intentional, maybe it's unintentional. I do believe that some of the politicians, a good portion of them actually, and which includes these police folks, because honestly, if my job depends on it and I'm convincing you something that could benefit my job, that ought to show you that there's some conflict of interest here. There's some biases that's existing. So I'm going to show y'all this video, and I want to know your opinions on what's taking place. Towards the end, I'm going to show you another clip. But again, I would just like y'all to get into the comments. Let me know what y'all thoughts on what you perceive in this video today. Make sure you share it. You know what I'm saying? Like it, because it helps with the algorithm. And it also helps with creating this conversation, because the truth of the matter is that we are in fascist times. Yet many people don't want to accept it because they are still under this guise that here in America, we are a free country. We're free individuals. We're able to do all these things without the infringement and the coercion of the government. And it's not aligning to what we see out in these times. So without further ado, let's just get into this video. All right, let's go. Man, I'm in my little office working on, studying and researching, because a prominent conversation and pervasive, because the jokers seem to be every motherfucking where, conversation that's taking place here in Rochester is currently, I'm over here switching stuff on next thing like an old lady. But good morning, beautiful people. Good afternoon, good evening. It doesn't matter what time it is. Just know today is the day that the Lord has made, and I rejoice and be glad in it. Why? God's good. He's good all the time. Nah. Man, I'm in my little office working on, studying and researching because a prominent conversation and pervasive, because the joke seemed to be every motherfucking where, conversation that's taking place here in Rochester is currently I'm over here switching stuff on next thing like an old lady, but it's currently on. Let me show you. Actually, I didn't even pull it up, man. I didn't even pull it up. Let me pull it up for you. I gotta go to my Facebook. But the media reporting is getting out of hand. It is getting out of hand. Who the freak? We ain't trying to see me. Let me situate this real quick. But, who the heck is that sending me a friend request? These news media outlets they're getting ridiculous, man. They get ridiculous. They constantly juxtaposing like crime to soliciting recruits for RPD employment. Now, for those who feel like, maybe if we had more people, if there was more of us that get into that space, maybe we could change things and all this other stuff. If that's your perspective, then that's cool. But the thing is that we have seen time and time again through research and everything that representation doesn't change anything for nobody. It doesn't get rid of racial biases. It doesn't having women in roles don't get rid of biases towards women. Having motherfucking people that come from poverty in positions of power doesn't help people who are currently in power, ensure that they maintain safe, ethical interactions and impartial interactions with the people in government. It doesn't do any of that stuff, It doesn't matter if the person's makeup seems to be similar to yours. The truth of the matter is that racial bias still exists irregardless of who holds the title, who is sitting in that position. And there's many reasons why, some of these reasons could be like they don't want to seem lenient on their own kind, right? Some of them could be self-hating, some sellouts. They the Sambo types, maybe, just maybe. I mean, there's all types of different factors, and I could sit here and try to go through them all, but it'll never make any sense because it won't be concrete. Because a reason for one person maintaining this idea or carrying out their procedures like this may vary from the next person, And so it's just annoying when you constantly have, like stuff like this popping up on the news where they're telling you about a suicidal child, then they tell you sexual assault, the mother freaking injury. I mean, I just seen this other one where it said that a kid, I think it was like under the age of 12 or something, was hit with a stray bullet in his house. And it's crazy that they report like this, because where are the reportings for the violent crimes that take place outside of metropolitan areas? It become to the point where people literally believe that Black people commit majority of the crimes nationwide because of the excessive media coverage that metropolitan areas get, right? And a lot of times people don't even know the name nor the face of the perpetrator. But as soon as they come to the realization that an alleged crime had taken place in a metropolitan area, they automatically attach Blackness to it. It's a Black man, or it had to be a Black woman, or it had to be a Black kid. To the point where I comment on these news article things And then I got people legitimate. I don't know if these people are bots, but majority of them, their demographic makeup, at least they look right. They look white. Most of them be like, from the boondock, like they be from the middle of nowhere, rural America. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing out there but the smell of cow turds and mother freaking corn ears that hasn't been cut down way past season. Like that's all that's out there, and a true value in the Dollar General. That's all that's out there. And these to be the type of people that's sitting here talking about how criminalistic black people are and criminalistic people are that live in the city, overlooking all the stuff that is pertained to them. I remember even coming across research where it showed that you are more likely to have your house broken into. You're more likely to have your vehicle stolen. Basically property, type of crimes. These things were more likely to happen outside of the city. Some of the reasoning behind it is because in the city, there's already this idea that people are going to invade your space. They're going to rob you. They're going to mug you. So majority of the people are locking their doors, house doors, their vehicle doors, rolling up their windows. I lived in West Henrietta, Churchville, Chi-Li, in Avon, New York, and East Rochester. And it was very, very common for the people that lived out there to leave their vehicles unsecure, their homes unsecure. These jokers will open up their garage, I guess airing it out or some trash, and then leave and go run errands. And these be the same people surprised when they come back that their stuff was broken into. But then you let these people talk and they're like, oh, robberies are always happening. Crime is always happening. Is black people out there in the middle of nowhere stealing from y'all? And then the crazy part about it is that crime, has always been attached to poverty. So why has crime been wrongly solely attached to black people? Like we the only people in poverty. Not for nothing. There's a lot more black people, in my opinion, living a lot better than a lot of the poor white people. You see what I'm saying? Even the concept white trash, it developed by black people looking at white people and they saying, I understand why I'm in the predicament that I'm in. I'm ostracized based on my color. I'm left out of spaces because of my color. I'm denied, residence in this location because of my color. I'm denied education here because of my color. I'm subjected to this motherfucking community as my residence because of my color. But what's your problem? You're white and you living just as bad as me, if not worse. That's literally where the concept white trash came from. So if crime is associated to poverty, why is it falsely attributed to solely black people? And then the whole point of me even bringing this up is about immigration, is because we continue to see the juxtaposition of crime and the need of increased local law enforcement employment but at the hands of media. And it's evident to me that media has motherfreaking been bought out by these politicians, by the police union. Here is the motherfreaking Locust Club. They've been bought out by corporate America because, like I told this lawyer yesterday at this deposition that I attended, when it comes to you people in power, I view y'all all the same. You're selfishly driven and you don't give a damn about the people because they don't. The police, here it is. The mayor in Rochester is a turd, so F that nigga. But you have people that sitting here saying, there's the talk going around about Rochester Police Department officers being involved in arresting, I guess, deportational immigrants, right? And then you got people ignorantly responding to it saying, well, they're illegally here. It's the police job to enforce the law and blah, 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 blah. And I love to break it to people because I actually done research on immigration. as it pertains to the acts of our government and their jurisdiction. And see, aside from me breaking down, what federalism is, it basically states that it's impossible. It's impossible for numerous police officers to take on roles of other police departments without their job being performed terribly. There's no efficacy there. Why? It's like you. If you were to multitask and try to do everything, you won't complete not one task because you're exhorting yourself in every motherfucking space to where you're not even giving yourself the chance to complete whatever it is that you're doing, And so nothing gets done, or the things that get done haphazardly. And so this idea that the local law enforcement are supposed to help the feds police immigrants, nigga, y'all crazy. It's impossible. The police can't even handle the workload they have on their own that's within their jurisdiction. Why the hell would they add on the workload of someone else's jurisdiction? Have y'all seen the clearance rates here in Rochester? To me, it's mind-blowing that you can see 5, 6, 10, 15 police cars sitting behind each other, lined up, pulling somebody over during a traffic stop. But yet, when it comes to clearance rates, which basically means the percentage of crime that are solved, it's less than 60%. If I score anything 60% or lower on a test, baby, I'm failing. Where's the criticism over this display of failure? And then they're sitting here talking about we need increased police presence. Why? In 1973, a study was done in Kansas City. It's called the Kansas City Preventative Patrol Experiment, where they basically sent out all these they had a control and they had the groups that they were testing, right? And the control was that the police maintain the same patrol beat methods that they normally do, while the other experimental groups, some groups, they were their presence was limited, and then there was another group where their presence was like extra. They was just everywhere, constantly seen. And they did this for quite a while. And by the end of the study, they have found that regardless if police were present, if police were not present, if the police maintained their normal functions, if police presence was increased, they have found that it had no effect on the perception of crime, nor the actual crime itself. So that means that regardless of having more or less police presence or maintaining exactly what they do currently, it did not change how people perceive crime. So the people who still perceived crime as running roughshod here still perceived crime as running roughshod. For the people who perceived crime as not really being a hindrance, still viewed it that way. And then the effects of the crime itself still maintain, because it found that, okay, just because you got police presence in this location doesn't mean that it got rid of or it got rid of crime. In fact, police presence didn't do anything but displace the criminal activity. So instead of the criminal activity being in this location, it just ended up going somewhere else. But yet, media, you got politicians that's like Mercedes Vasquez Simmons and Trump and the raggedy mayor we have here in Rochester. And even nationally, you got these people all over who continue to try to push this concept of social control, right, can help eliminate the crime. And it's like y'all alternate between social control and, I guess, lightening up. Or maybe you don't, and that's just how it's perceived, because nothing is changing. Because like society, we go through these periods of what they consider peace. We go through periods naturally where there's less crime that takes place. And then we naturally go through these areas where crime is a little heightened. The police has no effect on that. At least not anything that has been measurable through research. Politicians and their legislation have had no effect on that. And that's exactly the exact same. So why do we falsely attribute crime to certain groups? We sit here and push the same regurgitated rhetoric about how crime is increasing. Crime has been exactly the same since the 70s. The only thing that has changed are the acts that has been criminalized. I've been arrested several times, and majority of the times that I've been arrested were for nonviolent offenses. I've been arrested for nonviolent offenses, even in a state as New York, where there's bail reform that motherfreaking minimizes, the incarceration of those who have not been involved in violent crimes, have not, accumulated a criminal record and all this jazz. I mean, it's crazy. But I just want to put it out there because this is intended to be vague, or not vague, but brief. And as brief as I could get it to be. Because I'm going to go and I'm going through it now, making my notes so I can compile how I'm going to organize, my little monologue. And I'm going to put this in a YouTube video and help people see that your perception on immigration and your ideas of how society functions is flawed. You don't know what's going on. You don't. And I don't blame you because you don't know, what resources to take, right? Or what sources to utilize to gain some knowledge, right? Majority of the people out here, and I don't say it as a jab, but majority of the people out here are uneducated. And when I say uneducated, it's not necessarily in the sense of automatically just any college degree or any certification gains you, all the knowledge in the world. I do look at it as assistance. It elevates you because you have a little bit more knowledge in your arsenal than you had when you graduated high school or when you got your GED. It's like when you read a book. This is why I encourage people, if you're not going to go to school, read. Pick up a book that's outside of your comfort so you can learn something new. Because little do you know, you might come across the information that I've come across. A lot of the stuff that I come across did not necessarily come out of my actual educational curriculum. It came out of me reading recreationally. Like the book that I have, Dying of Whiteness, and it's by, Dying of Whiteness is not by Patrick Phillips. I was about to butcher. But Dying of Whiteness by, I think it's Jonathan Metzl. But this book right here, people be looking at me and be acting like I'm lying. It's right in here, man. Dying of Whiteness. Let me show it to you. How the politics of racial resentment is killing America's heartland. And in this book, he talks about literally racial resentment killing folks. It's the same ordeal when it comes to immigration, is that you got people voting for politicians and policies that they perceive as harming the outside groups, the other people, and ultimately harm themselves, right? Because if which happened in this book, this dude interviewed several people and they was making decisions like this. However, if I was to vote for a politician and a policy that goes against, adequate and efficient and affordable health care under the guise that I don't want anyone else to have access to it, I ultimately end up hurting myself. And I end up restricting myself from gaining access to that efficient, affordable, that adequate motherfreaking healthcare. And this is what happened in the book. This man was hooked up to a motherfreaking He was hooked up to oxygen tank and everything. This nigga was on his dying breath and then actually died. All the while justifying him voting for politicians and policies that did not provide the people health care, even though this nigga needed it. Why? Because he didn't want immigrants to get it. This nigga died to ensure someone else didn't get something that could have benefited him. If that's not selfish, baby, I don't know what it is. But this is society. Selfishly driven and don't give a damn about the people. You have people who use migration and immigration interchangeably as if they're the same thing. They're not. They're not. You ever heard of the Great Migration that took place in the South here amongst black people? My daddy is considered a migrant. My great uncle and my great aunts, they're considered migrants. Them jokers moved from down south up to New York in search of a better life. That's all they did. Immigrants are people who come from an outside country to a new country seeking the same thing. Migrants are people moving within a country to another location in that same country seeking the same thing. They do the same thing. The only difference is one is from an outside country, the other one is traveling within that country. But you got people talking about migrants as if that don't include them. Nigga, if you move from the location you are at now to another one, you're considered a migrant. This is why I encourage people to pick up a book and read. Education got people in the chokehold, for real. But the thing is that in addition to that, you got people who falsely claim that immigrants or immigration is illegal. And it's like, baby, do you know what illegal mean? Because here, I got another book for you. I got another book. The New York State Penal Law book. In this motherfucking book is no mentions of immigration status. I could find all types of stuff in here. From motherfucking assault to murder to rape to harassment, even assisted suicide. Baby, it's illegal to throw projectiles in the state of New York, but it's not illegal to reside in the state of New York or any state in the United States where it's considered illegal. Why? Because it's not placed in any criminal motherfucking laws. Your citizen status is not criminal. It's civil. And this is why I tell people, if they're residing here legally, then why aren't these people processed in criminal court? Why aren't they processed in criminal court? Explain it to me. I could tell you why they're not processing them in criminal court. Because in criminal court, based on the Constitution, you automatically have rights that are afforded to you, which includes having counsel provided to you, facing your accusers. Then it puts the burden on your accuser to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you did what you are accused of. These jokers can't prove immigration status, just like they can't prove eviction status. Immigration status, like eviction status, is handled in civil court. Why do they handle it in civil court versus criminal? One, because it's not illegal to reside in a place that you were once paying rent and you are no longer paying rent. It's not illegal. And it's not illegal to go to a whole nother country in looking for that better life. I mean, American dream. That's what they sell niggas on. Come here, you get the American dream. And then they get mad when the niggas come here to get that American dream. That's what you advertise. Falsely. But that's what you advertise. So please, help me understand. Like, what? And then people sit here and they regurgitate the same fallacies. If you hate immigrants, baby, you could just say that. You don't have to make up all this stuff, talk about their existence is illegal. That's That's not even possible here. And even if they were to make that a law, the whole point of the courts, you literally could sue for everything. You sue, and then you don't get a decision that you like, you appeal. And you keep appealing until you get the decision that you like. Because the whole point of the Supreme Court is to rule whether or not that the lower level, municipalities, because there's this thing called federalism, where the federal government is at the top. The local jurisdictions are at the bottom. And there's oversight. And the Supreme Court are to rule using scrutiny whether or not that the laws that they put in place violate. But we see in this raggedy country that nothing is permanent. We see with Roe v. Wade, one moment it's illegal. Then the next moment they pass legislation, Roe v. Wade, that protects women from getting abortions and stuff, to now they overturn it. This is what happens with laws. This is why the Bible tells you to curses any man who put his trust in man. Man is infallible. They unstable in all their ways because they double-minded. One moment they own this, the next moment they own this. That's where all this motherfucking confusion and ambiguity comes from. But back to the immigrations, people wrongly attribute immigration as a criminal matter, and it's not. It's handled in the civil court. And it's strategically handled in civil court because the cops can scoop up everybody, arrest you, throw you away, and all that wonderful jazz. And then there's no one to question on the legalities of your arrest, especially once you have been deemed a deportable immigrant. There's no one that's going to check you. And in fact, they'll send you to a whole nother country. And then when you get to that whole nother country, that country going to treat you exactly how criminals are treated here in America. You get no rights. You get locked away. Nobody knows where you at. You don't get to communicate with nobody. And then you probably get thrown into the little incarceral motherfucking fights for profit that they got going on in there, like it's the Gladiator or some trash. There's no one to question the legalities of your arrest, and now you just somewhere being violated. And this is what I wanted to talk about, because people, especially here in Rochester, people wrongly think like the police can get involved. Let me show you, because I did the research on it. And to be fair, it's the federal government that runs immigration status. It's not local law enforcement. Like I told you, it's impossible for police to participate in functions that is outside their jurisdiction when they still have their own jurisdictional duties. But let's look at this. Federal agencies are completely separate entities from local law enforcement agencies. Their missions vary, and it is impossible for one to do the other task with efficacy. Regarding immigration status, the federal government maintains jurisdiction and authority over its enforcement, whereas local law enforcement's scope of authority is solely making arrests for a small subset of criminal immigration violations. And then it says, although it was not quite clear on where local law enforcement agencies, also referred to as LLEAs, local law enforcement agencies, stood on enforcing immigration prior to now, because the law was quite vague about the role of local and state law enforcement agencies. Local law enforcement agencies have little to no legal involvement in immigration, let alone in civil matters. And I'm going to show you right here. And this is the source I use. So we are going to Google this motherfucking, this little boop. So that way, you can see it's a motherfucking peer-reviewed article. Actually, what am I doing? CashApp 2009. What page is that? 3. Let's go all the way to my little yas. CashApp 2009. The role of local police striking a balance between immigration enforcement and civil liberties. This is where I motherfucking found that from. Boom. And this is literally where I got that information from. My bad, y'all. So you can see it a little better. This is why I encourage y'all to motherfucking read. Pick up material and just read. Because you will be better informed when you just read. For God's people perish due to a lack of knowledge. Let's continue. It also says, the makeup of the jurisdiction that the varying law enforcement agencies cover are: sheriffs preside over counties, police departments are over particular cities, whereas the United States Border Patrol and Customs Enforcement, aka ICE, which previously was referred to as INS, Immigration and Naturalization Service, had the responsibility of enforcing criminal and civil violations of immigration law, which includes, when they say criminal violations of immigration law, they are talking about actual crime that they take place. The civil violations includes their status as undocumented. It's not criminal to have undocumented status. It's civil. It's criminal to commit crime, like stealing, motherfucking robberies, you know what I'm saying, harassment, assaulting people, murder, rape, all that jazz, throwing projectiles. It says, despite there being minimal word of local and state police not assisting in immigration matters because of the federal government being capable, it was still possible to see local law enforcement agencies participating, even to a small degree. Modern immigration enforcement methods have stretched over to include internal controls. Local law enforcement agencies to target undocumented and deportable immigrants residing in the nation within the nation's borders, despite immigration being limited to border control. These niggas done left the border and started harassing people past beyond the border. Jesus Christ. And then you always know who names about to pop up. It's either Reagan or Nixon. But here we talking about Ronald Reagan or Ronald Reagan. The Reagan Justice Department incited more cooperation from local law enforcement agencies in 1983. This was 40 years ago. And what these niggas doing now under Donald Trump's administration? The exact same thing. The Reagan Justice Department incited more cooperation from LLEAs, local law enforcement agencies, in 1983, which limited the role solely to notifying Immigration and Naturalization Services, known as INS, of immigrants suspected of being deportable. The support of this idea developed from the position that state law authorizes local law enforcers to enforce criminal provisions of federal law. So they can arrest in regards to criminality. State and local police could exercise their authority to enforce criminal provisions of federal immigration law. The source is CashApp 2009 again. But it said, due to this dilemma, there was not any clarity on whether or not local law enforcement agencies are legally allowed to enforce, immigration policies. And I'm going to read this last paragraph and then I'm done, okay? Because y'all going to get this in my YouTube video. Then it says, however, about 10 years later, it was clarified and the purview of immigration fell onto the federal government. So, 1983, we were talking about how it wasn't really sure where local law enforcement stood in regards to the enforcement of immigration law, right? Then it says about 10 years later, it was clarified and the purview of immigration fell solely onto the federal government. So that literally stripped local law enforcement of any motherfucking jurisdiction. Because it solely fell on the federal government. Then it says post 2002 at a conference, Attorney General John Ashcroft announced a reversal of the DOJ's long-standing opinion, stating that the state and local officials have inherent authority to enforce federal immigration law. So this is post 2002, right? Then in Arizona versus United States 2012, it was reaffirmed that local law enforcement agencies are not authorized to stop or detain individuals for presumed violations of civil immigration law. I'm going to run that back for you. See, post 2002 at a conference, Attorney General John Ashcroft announced the reversal of the DOJ's longstanding opinion. So the longstanding opinion was that the purview, the jurisdiction of immigration solely reside with motherfreaking the federal government. In 2002, Attorney General John Ashcroft announced a reversal to that motherfreaking opinion, stating that state and local law enforcement have an inherent authority to enforce federal immigration law. Then, about another 10 years later, in Arizona v. United States, 2012, it was reaffirmed that the local law enforcement agents are not authorized to stop or detain individuals for presumed violations of civil immigration law. Also, the 10th Amendment bars coerced cooperation between local and state governments to enforce and adopt policies that are mandated by the federal government. So the federal government cannot force local law enforcement to help them. And it was ruled in 2012 that local law enforcement agencies, which include city and state police, are not authorized to stop nor detain individuals for presumed violations to citizen status as it pertains to the immigration law. So the people who want to sit here and say all this wild stuff, baby, pick up a book and read. That's all you got to do. That's all you got to do. I'm going to end that there with just saying, in Arizona versus United States 2012, it was reaffirmed that local law enforcement agents are not in Arizona v. United States 2012, it was reaffirmed that local law enforcement agencies are not authorized to stop or detain individuals for presumed violations of civil immigration law. Also, the 10th Amendment prohibits the coercion of cooperation between local and state governments to enforce and or adopt policies mandated by the federal government. So not only is it established that the local law enforcement are not authorized to engage in motherfreaking civil immigration law or anything pertaining to it, but also the 10th Amendment bans, prohibits, bars motherfreaking coercion of cooperation by the local law enforcement as it pertains to federal law. So again, please tell me, where in there does local law enforcement are allowed? And even the Locust Club trying to defend those couple of officers that all they did was put some handcuffs on people. They're exaggerating. Nigga, they weren't even supposed to do that. According to Arizona v. United States 2012, it was reaffirmed that local law enforcement agencies are not authorized to stop or detain individuals for presumed violations of civil immigration law. This is a Supreme Court ruling, bruh. In Arizona v. United States, that is a federal court proceeding. Federal court stated that local law enforcement are not authorized to stop nor detain individuals for presumed violations of civil immigration law. Yet, Locust Club president is defending Rochester Police Department officers for responding to backup call from state troopers and ICE to get involved with helping them detain individuals that they presume to have violated civil immigration law. I'm going to end here and I promise you I'm done. If this don't show you that we outnumber the police, I don't know what to tell you. Why would federal police officers who have a larger jurisdiction, they have access to more funding, seek help from a department that, one, they're not legally allowed to help? Why would they seek help? I'll tell you why. When it comes to the federal police, when it comes to government employees to begin with, it don't matter if you're looking at police, court employees, like staff, whether it's a motherfreaking secretary, a judge, an attorney, motherfreaking the stenographer, them people are outnumbered. When you look at the police department in total, nationally, and that's combining federal, motherfreaking state, and city, local, when you combine all of them, they barely make up a couple 100,000 individuals that is employed in all those police departments. Yet, you got a tiny percentage of what, like maybe 20,000 federal officers, and that's being generous, who are tasked with the job to handle violations to civil law or civil immigration law. So of course they're going to ask for help, because even though they're not supposed to, not from the lower level, the lower local law enforcement, but they'll ask for help because they know they're outnumbered. They don't have the manpower. And even though they receive a decent amount of funding as being a federal agency, they don't have the manpower nor funding to even process all these cases. And as we see, they're limited to the borders. Yet these niggas is far from the borders. They up in people's homes. They on the streets within communities, like straight up in cities. They far from borders. They literally looking for people, and then they calling for help because they can't even help themselves. There ain't enough of them. It's the same thing with RPD. RPD calls for help from state troopers all the time. How many times y'all see state troopers rolling around in New York or in Rochester? It's because even though there's about 700 RPD officers, barely 200 of them are patrol officers. Over 80% of RPD officers work in administration. That's why they big bad. They just sitting at a desk all day. Some of them might sit on a horse. Some of them might do some community outreach, but after that, they go right back to administrative work, which is literally jobs that can be held by civilians. But hey, they like to make you think that the unemployment rates are out here are better. Even though when you try to foil public, a documentation that you publicly have access to, they sit and hit you with the garbage of excuses that they gave me. Well, we don't have enough people. We just had one lady who lost her daughter and she took time off from work, and that's a you problem, not me. I requested a document. By law, you are supposed to abide by the time restraints that are given. You're not. That's a you problem. You need more people to work in those positions? Come hire all these unemployed people that you won't give the job to because they don't have some high school education or they don't have a college education. You don't need that to be a secretary. And that's all them people are sitting in that office. Secretaries. They're not even paralegals. They're secretary. And if you think about it, a paralegal ain't nothing but a legal secretary. It's a secretary whose focus is solely law. Legal documentation. Yeah, it's crazy how you could just reduce everything down to nothing because all of it is vanity anyways, like the Bible says. But it goes to show you, the police are outnumbered. There's more of us than there are of them. So this is why they go out of their way to motherfreaking get help and they violate your constitutional rights because honestly, if they were to do everything the way that they're supposed to, the process would be dragged out. And I don't think they will ever arrest most people. Arrest rates will go down tremendously. Incarceration rates will go down tremendously. The backlog for courts will increase tremendously. And then you'll have a bunch of people suing because they have the right to speedy trial. But it's being prolonged because of what? They don't have the funds nor the manpower. Which is why now majority convictions that take place in the courts are established by plea bargains. You helping them do their job. If all the people that's funneled through the criminal justice system refused to take a plea and they pushed for court, the criminal justice system would fail as it stands because it's not equipped. If everybody, you got to remember, over 90% of convictions are resolved by plea bargains. It's not established by them finding the person guilty in a court of law. It's literally established by plea bargains, where 10% of court cases actually push to go to trial. And of that 10%, less than 2% of those cases are actually found guilty by a court of law. So that goes to show you that you have a greater chance of acquiring freedom than you do if you were to motherfreaking just admit guilt to these people. They want you to do their jobs. They don't have the funding nor manpower, and they don't even be reading your stuff. They don't even read your stuff. So this is why I tell y'all, motherfucking read, bro. Read. Read stuff that's outside of your comfort, because that's the only way you educate yourself. You don't take nothing from here, take away this. Immigration is not a criminal matter. It's civil. And it's been strategically placed as a civil matter because it ensures that they can deport people and send them wherever they want to send them without any oversight, without being held accountable for their unconstitutional, unlawful, unethical actions. A lot of the rights and protections that you are afforded under the Constitution mostly applies in the criminal realm. In the civil realm, you're on your own. You got to get your own lawyer. There is no necessarily, the burden of proof is not on the people that you are accusing. The burden of proof falls on the person that's suing. And if you ain't got no money, how you going to get an attorney? At least in the criminal side, if you are poor, what they call an indigent, then an attorney will be provided to you. An attorney isn't provided to you in civil court. Most of them people that get processed don't understand whether it's like mental, hindrances, and or they don't speak the language. And there's no oversight. There's no one to ensure that you have a translator, that there's no one to ensure that you understand the process that you are being thrown through. There's none of that. Not on the civil side. You're on your own. Which from the get, it looks bleak for you because 9 times out of 10 you're poor. And with you being poor, you lack access to so many resources that can help you fight this motherfucking immigration stuff. I mean, honestly, the only reason why you're going through what you're going through is because you're poor. Because if you had some money, 9 times out of 10, you probably wouldn't have came here undocumented. They're literally incarcerating people and throwing people away, deporting them because they didn't have the money to spend about $5,000 to gain documentation to come here. And so now they're deporting you, and then they're saying it's illegal because you didn't pay money. If it's unconstitutional to incarcerate me for being poor on the criminal side, then it should be illegal to incarcerate me in regards to civil proceedings. And this is the part that I think is crazy, is that you literally have people sitting in jail for civil violations. People don't even notice, but there's ample people sitting in jail currently for motherfucking traffic infractions, unpaid traffic tickets. You literally have people being processed through the criminal side for civil matters. Make it make sense. And it's solely because of what? Because you're poor. Because if you could afford an attorney, you won't be here. If you could pay for documentation, you won't be here. If you can, if you have money, you won't be in the predicament you in. If you had money, you would have paid your traffic infractions, therefore would not be sitting in jail for driving around with a suspended license or a revoked license. Which your license can be suspended or revoked from you gaining a bunch of parking tickets that you can't afford to pay, because the minimum a parking ticket costs is $50. And that's not even including the fees that they throw on that are constantly accumulated as time goes on. It never stops. So where you went from a $50 ticket, you could be easily looking at like a $2,000+ ticket just from fees, bruh. But this is the society we live in. I encourage you, you don't learn nothing from this. Learn that immigration is not a criminal matter, it's civil. And learn that the police are outnumbered and they don't have the funding to process us. Neither does the courts. That's why they depend on illegal, unconstitutional matters like coercion. Motherfreaking guilty pleas. You literally do their job when you take a guilty plea. Their job is to use deception, to pump you up with fear, to get you to make a decision outside of discernment. You make an irrational decision, which ultimately benefits them because your body gets incarcerated. That's money in their pockets. They depend on this. The prosecutor gets paid for convictions. The county sheriff get paid to babysit grown people sitting up in jail. You see what I'm saying? Correctional officers get paid to babysit grown people sitting up in prison. So without your body, they ain't got no job. So I implore you to watch as well as pray and look out here, because a lot of the stuff that you see, all this constant regurgitation and emphasis of motherfucking crime, you'll come to realize that things have not changed. The police has always been corrupt. Politicians has always been corrupt. Judges have always been corrupt. These business corporation owners have always been corrupt, and they work amongst each other. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. You pass legislation that benefits me, I'll put some money in your pocket. I'll help you get this, connection that you were incapable of gaining on your own. I'll help you in some quid pro quo, my nigga. This is where they at. And so you are profitable. You are profitable in the criminal justice system. You ain't nothing but a check to these people. So out in there, make sure you share this video and inform people, because people don't realize that local law enforcement are not authorized to engage in the federal government's dealings as it pertains to immigration. Literally. And there was a Supreme Court in here. There's a Supreme Court case, Arizona versus United States, 2012. And it established that local law enforcement are prohibited from engaging in any activity as it pertains to criminal or excuse me, as it pertains to civil immigration law. They're not even supposed to be making arrests. That solely falls under the purview of the federal government. I love y'all. God bless. Peace. That's crazy.
It's that shit right here, right?
It is, sir.
Hey, it's that.
The same spot where Timothy Flowers was murdered. That's the way they rolled up on the car pointing guns and stuff is crazy. Like, what they even doing, bro? Then we got this dude running the light. Like, what the freak? If you want people to think otherwise of you more positively, then give them more positive experiences.